Well, I'm back at it again, and I gotta say that this was the best episode I've ever done, as every single episode is always the best one I've ever done. But Gretchen Wallace is with me today, and she and I are talking about eating disorders. She's been in the eating disorder field since 2016 and has extensive experience in treating adolescents and young adults. So she is at this moment a dietitian, and she has her own practice, and she is changing people's lives by supporting them and helping them in this space of eating disorders. Now, we talked a lot about all the things, but I want to make one point. I feel like it's so important. The first thing I'd like to say is we talked about why and how men are being missed. Men are being missed in the eating disorder conversation. There are many women who are diagnosed and being treated, and their women are more likely to get an eating disorder, but we cannot leave men out of the conversation. And so we didn't. We talk about men, we talk about women, we talk about young kids, teenagers, college students, and adults. And I wanted to have this conversation and say, okay, so Gretchen, why don't we put it into groups? Why don't we say, what can we say to all our adolescents? What can we say to all our teenagers? And it just didn't work out that way. Halfway through the interview, I said, oh, I can't compartmentalize this. There's no way. This is the information she's giving, the wisdom, the experience, the stories that she's sharing are ageless. You can be 70 and still struggling with body image, with an eating disorder. So, some of the things that this conversation touched on, which I think are the keys here, is she said, we are all under the spell of diet culture. And we believe that we are deficient, that our bodies, our lives, and the food we eat isn't good enough. And so she wants to encourage us to step into trust with our body and our personhood. That to me was, yes, a resounding yes. She also said it's really important to be open and honest, that healthy living, healthy size is actually real life, that not everybody is made rail thin. And she called it, I'm just going to flip the page here. She said, body dysmorphia, which is one of the topics we talked about, is a common social media adjusted thing. And I thought that was interesting. And she says adjusted meaning someone has been tucked, someone has been their nose has been different, they have whatever, they've adjusted their body in some way, and they are sharing with our young people, they are sharing with our children, hey, eat this food, do this, do that. And people who have different body types are looking and saying, okay, that's the standard, and it isn't the gold standard. And yes, maybe this episode is a bit hard on social media. I do feel we need to be, because there's a stat, and I'm just going to bring it up. It says that the suicide rates in girls ages 10 to 14 have increased 151% since 2009. And that's the proliferation of social media, which I thought was incredible. And between 5th and 12th grades, girls who say they are confident plummets from 86% to 62%. And this is, it's just crazy. The challenges for females, and this is just a girl's stat, is 7 out of 10 girls believe that they're not good enough. And what are our dietitians, our nutritionists, what are people saying? Why is this happening? And what Gretchen Wallace can point to in her experience, she is not a therapist, and she's saying that, "I'm not a therapist, I am a dietitian," and she's got all her accreditations, but she's saying the main thing is social media, that people are saying, "This is what it looks like, and here's me." And someone else who doesn't look like that is saying, "Well, that's the gold standard, I need to get there." We've got to adjust ourselves, and we can do that. I think we can, but we are gonna start the conversation about this. Um, the one thing she left me with, which I loved so much, she said, we need to think about how we are having conversation with ourselves. So she said, like, bad comments about our bodies. She said someone might say, I will wake up this morning and say to their friend, "Oh, I woke up this morning and I just hated my bloating." And the other person's like, "Yeah, I know. I woke up this morning and I just hated my arm. My arm just looks a little bit flabby. I'm just retaining water." And she said, um, we are normalizing hatred for our bodies. We are normalizing that uh, restrictive dieting. She says, it is okay to be at peace in our bodies. And that is what she is carrying into her practice. That is what she is carrying to her clients because she believes this. And I hear her, I believe it, and I would like to offer you this conversation on eating disorders with Gretchen Wallace. She is a treat to listen to. I've appreciated her wisdom and her knowledge and her experience. And this is what I get to share with you today. So please join me and Gretchen as we have a really important conversation about eating disorders. I'm really excited to have you on.
Yay.
As I was
I'm
doing the research, I I get I'm a little teary
yeah.
because I was looking at one of just this piece that I was researching, and it was Girls in the Know, which is on
Mhm.
your website,
Mhm.
and they're saying like these eating disorders have gone up 151%
Mhm.
in young girls
Mhm.
since the social media began. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to say because I don't hear about this much. And as I was making my second cup of coffee this morning, I was thinking, how why am I not hearing
Mhm.
about this? If if there are so many people who are struggling with an eating disorder, why is this information not getting to us? Is there I mean, obviously there would be shame involved. Families
Mhm.
want to keep this a secret. But why? What I'm just looking, and I know our listeners, we're looking for you to educate us. We want to
Mhm.
learn. I want to learn everything that you can tell me because this had me like when they said Girls in the Know, it says knowledge is power, and it says our mission is to empower girls to embrace a strong sense of self with a vision that every girl will know I'm enough.
Mhm.
And that got me. And I know that's
Mhm.
why you're doing your work with your business, which is the full life
Mhm. Yes.
nutrition.com. Your clinic, would you say it's a clinic? Yes.
So it's just me. So I always call it my practice.
Your practice. Okay.
Yeah. That is my bubble of me being a dietitian. That's, how people come to me and work with me at this point. I have in the past worked at eating disorder treatment centers. I've worked on college campuses, things like that, but I am officially full-time in my practice at this point, which is really
Beautiful.
exciting and
Whoa.
fun.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, that's kind of where I see people one-on-one. I do have like a newsletter and all of that kind of stuff too to kind of have different methods of providing that education because kind of getting back to what you were saying, I think with eating disorders, it's something that people kind of don't want to think about until it is impacting them, right? And as you were talking, I was thinking about that too of like, obviously, I'm very aware that there is a huge influx of people seeking care for eating disorders and disordered eating in general. And what sometimes I notice is that there's almost this perspective of like, but isn't this kind of normal? Like everybody I know is on a diet. Every girl that I went to high school with hated her body. Why is it weird that my daughter hates her body? Why does why is this now concerning when so much of what is being experienced is actually really normalized in society? And so it means that there's almost like a gray area, and that gray area to me is like when do you start suffering? Like if your relationship with food is causing you harm and discomfort, it's impacting your relationships, your sense of self, obviously at that point it's causing harm. Your ability to feed yourself is not working the way that we want it to. And so for some people they engage with dieting behaviors or disordered eating behaviors, and they either kind of bounce back out of it without having the same level of impact, or they keep kind of going further and further. And at some point, it transitions into an eating disorder. And so, yeah, that I think when we're talking about like public health and communication about health, I think it's a tricky subject because people really want to encourage healthy behaviors, and sometimes when we're putting so much emphasis on that, or we're putting a lot of pressure, I guess, on some of those behaviors, can actually make people a little bit more likely to kind of edge into that eating disorder territory.
That is really interesting.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that because there's a few things that I think will help us sort of jump off on this conversation because the don't want to know, right? I don't want to know until I notice something.
Mhm.
This is across the board. When you are thinking about emotional issues or mental health issues,
Mhm.
this is what happens. It's, I don't want to know I'm depressed until I know, or I don't want to know that you're depressed until like it gets to the very, very end and this major thing happens.
Mhm.
And now we're all in crisis. It's
Mhm.
so can you speak to that piece? It's almost like, I don't know where the building blocks are here, but we are gonna mine for them. So so that's what I wanna know is, so what is the don't wanna know piece? What are you hearing? What are you hearing from parents of children? And we're talking like children, correct?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got children, teenagers, college age, and then we have adults.
Mhm.
So this is not exclusive to age and it is not exclusive to gender.
No. Yeah.
What is the main point of I don't want to know?
That is a really hard question, and it likely is different for a lot of different people, right? There's as much work as we've done on reducing stigma in mental health, it still exists. There's still stigma for taking medications or for needing to see a therapist, wanting to see a dietitian, really anything that is supporting that mental side of ourselves, right? We still see mental health as distinct from physical health. That's partially like our insurance thinks of it as different. We have different level of coverage for those things, at least in the United States. And so you know, there's that difficulty for some people to kind of recognize it as like, okay, this is serious and it's not something I'm just going to get over, right? Or it's not just a phase that my kid is in. It's not just a blip in time. And I guess for some people it is, right? It's not impossible that somebody can work themselves through it, or that, you know, their experience changes a little bit and all of a sudden these behaviors get a little bit better. But for a lot of people, especially in the culture that we're living under, which, diet culture, that big umbrella and big buzzword that is existing right now, um, when we're living under that pressure, for a lot of us, when we get on that path, it's probably going to continue. and it starts to feel like this thing that is supportive, right? That's the goal when we're changing diet behaviors, when we're engaging in new types of exercise, when we're, you know, cutting out foods from our diet. It's like, well, I'm doing this because I believe it's good for me, right? And maybe even somebody told me that it's good for me. And so I'm doing this thing. And even though I can tell that maybe it doesn't feel great, I have to believe it's doing something good. And I have to believe that, this person didn't lie to me on the internet, or, I see these what I eat in a day videos and they all seem so happy. So why is it different for me? And so I don't know that it's necessarily always like intentionally looking away from it being a problem. It's almost not seeing it as a problem and thinking of it as more of like, well, no, yeah, this is something I'm doing for my health and for my well-being. And it can take a long time for us to recognize like, oh, this is causing harm. I can't go out to eat with my friends anymore because I don't know that there's anything I can eat, or I don't feel comfortable. I can't let myself rest for one day without going to the gym because, oh my gosh, what if my body changes? I wouldn't be able to tolerate that. And so again, it's this like growing of things, or growing of a disorder from things that theoretically are healthy, or at least that we've been told are healthy.
Growing from things that theoretically we are told through diet, through
Mhm.
influencers, through people sharing their lives,
Mhm.
through media, we are thinking that then this is a normal way to be because he or she or they are doing this.
Mhm.
Therefore, we're not thinking about ourselves because if it works for them, then it will
Mhm.
most likely work for me. And then that would be, I'm inserting here because you did not say this, but you're insinuating it's a
Mhm.
slippery slope then, because
Mhm.
off we go down. Like, how far, and I don't know if you can track this, but how far is too far? Like, when do you know I'm down the slope? I actually can't get back up there. Like, where's this line? Is there a
Mhm.
line?
So, the diagnostic criteria for eating disorders are really, really narrow. I think of it as like a little tiny box that we have to fit into. So, it's maybe the wrong analogy for eating disorder treatment, but
Well,
like,
I think that's a good, if you're putting that towards the information that's out there,
hmm
the conversations that I'm not hearing,
hmm
then it is a small box.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So there's weight criteria, there's times per week criteria, there's all of these different, like, I guess, standards that are in place kind of for decent reason, I guess. There's studies and all of that kind of stuff that are supposed to inform what designates somebody as having anorexia versus bulimia versus binge eating disorder versus otherwise specified feeding and eating disorder. But we do know that the vast majority of people fall in that last category, that OSFED, otherwise specified feeding and eating disorder category. The fewest number of people fall in the anorexia category. And
Okay.
it's also the eating disorder that we hear the most about and that people picture oftentimes in their heads of like, yeah, somebody who's visibly malnourished and who is restricting all of their foods and all of that kind of stuff. But the reality is that those behaviors show up differently for different people. And OSFED kind of works as that catch-all diagnosis to say, okay, yeah, you're restricting a bit, but you also are over exercising, and you also sometimes have binging behaviors, and maybe you haven't lost the same amount of weight as somebody else has. And so we have kind of that other box that's maybe a little bit more diverse in what behaviors can look like. And so from it, a dietitian is not allowed to diagnose. So I'm not walking around telling people like, you have anorexia, you have OSFED, things like that. A therapist and a doctor are the ones who diagnose. But from my perspective as a non diagnosing clinician, I view it as like, okay, what if we look at it more as what are the things that are causing problems in your life? If we are so restrictive with the types of food that we eat, that it's again, negatively impacting our relationships. It's making it hard to be able to eat out. It's making it hard to be able to maintain a healthy weight because we're cutting out those foods. Then we know that the restriction is a problem. If we are feeling really distressed because we binge before we go to bed at night, and we are eating an amount of food that physically feels uncomfortable, and we have these like guilt and shame feelings that come up for us, and it's negatively impacting us. That we can call a behavior that has gone too far. It's not
Okay.
supporting us in any way, shape, or form. So we have kind of the physical side of it of like, yeah, if we have medical complications, if we are losing significant amounts of weight in an unsupportive way, that obviously is a piece of the puzzle of like, yeah, we
Yeah.
we should get treatment. There's something
Right.
going on. But we also have that like interpersonal humanistic side of ourselves of like, food is supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be a way to connect with other people. It's fuel, but it's so much more than fuel at the same time. And so if that side of ourselves is also being restricted and harmed, I think that's also a place where we need to look at it and really question, are these behaviors supporting me or are they actually making my life harder and smaller?
That's a really great highlight. Are these behaviors supporting me, or are these behaviors actually making my life smaller
Mm.
and harder?
Mhm.
Yes. Would you be able to share with us I mean, I know there's anorexia, there's bulimia, but could you please share are there 5 eating disorders?
Huh. You're gonna test my limits of exactly,
I mean,
the
you don't have to
definition
tell
of
me the
where they
5,
fall.
but you've mentioned the feeding and
Yeah, so you know, we have anorexia, we have bulimia, and then we have OSFED. So OSFED is that otherwise specified feeding and eating disorder, which from here on out, I'm just gonna say OSFED because it's a mouthful.
OS
So,
OS fed.
yep,
Okay,
exactly.
OS fed. Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Okay,
So that is actually a blanket category. So under OSFED, we have ARFID, we have binge eating disorder, we have purging disorders, we have night eating disorder. There's a bunch of them. And I
okay,
don't think I even just said all of them,
sure.
but they all kind of fall under that blanket of OSFED. And they're all, again, some version of a compensatory, a binging or a restrictive eating pattern, or a combination of all of them. So that's why I oftentimes kind of shift into the overview of like, are we restricting, are we compensating, are we binging, and looking at it more that way, partially again because I'm not going to diagnose anyway, but also because sometimes it helps people to step out of the labels, because there can also be kind of an over identification, or I guess kind of a like way of viewing yourself based on a
Mm.
diagnosis,
Like a
um
label even,
a
even
label.
this
Mhm.
you talked about the box earlier. Well,
Mhm.
get in the box because now you have one of these things that's going on for you, and not many of us like the feeling of being in a box, that
Mhm.
trapped. Because I would suggest even that if this is something that anybody is struggling with, they already feel out of control.
Mhm.
They
Yes.
feel most likely that there aren't many parameters for them.
Mhm.
Maybe you would speak differently to that, but that would be my first initial sense, that
Mhm.
out of control feeling because they're looking for something and they're maybe not finding exactly what they're looking for.
Mhm.
Um, how do you speak to this?
Yeah, so I'm going to paint with a somewhat generalized brush for a
Yeah,
minute.
sure.
But what I
Please.
see the most often is that our restrictive eating disorders are a seeking of control. And we hear that a lot. I get a little annoyed when we minimize eating disorders to that one thing of like, you're just looking for control, because there's so much more going on
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
But a restrictive eating disorder oftentimes gives us a sense of control in an otherwise uncontrollable world. We all know that the world is uncontrollable. We don't
Yes.
have a lot of say in all of the things that happen to us. And so, especially when we're experiencing a traumatic experience or going through something really hard in life, a restrictive eating disorder can help to create a semblance of control. On the
Hmm.
flip side, when we have a binging disorder and maybe even a compensatory disorder where we have purging behaviors or otherwise, some of those can feel a little bit more out of control. Not always, but a lot of times they do. And so that's also what I was kind of talking about of people can feel differently about themselves even just based on those kind of like assumptions, right? Of like people who are restricting are really in control. They get a lot of compliments of like, I wish I could eat like you. I just have no self-control. You do such a good job of, following your diet and being really, on top
Which
of things.
which then just reinforces that what they're doing is actually right, when in
Exactly.
reality, it's really harming them,
Mhm.
but it makes you feel seen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes you feel seen and it also helps reinforce that feeling that you're doing something good for yourself, right? So again,
Hmm.
if we're going back to the very beginning of this conversation of like why is nobody talking about this? Why aren't we building more awareness? A lot of people are getting complimented for their eating disorder because
Oh my god.
so many people are wanting to lose weight or to diet or to take control of their health and an eating disorder front page from what you see from the outside kind of looks like you're doing those things. On the inside, it feels like your body is breaking down and your relationships are struggling and you hate your body and you don't feel like there's a way out of it. But yeah, from other people, you're getting this really positive feedback. And so again, kind of painting with a broad brush. That's not always exactly what happens, but it's definitely a factor for a lot of people just having a, a huge lack of awareness about what an eating disorder is and how serious that it really is.
Well, it is serious. I've always known it's serious,
Mhm.
but I've n I've never, known any of my friends to say to me, "I struggled with an eating disorder."
Mhm.
I've not known that. So it feels to me either I'm out of touch or people aren't sharing or I'm not asking the right questions, but who would ask the right questions?
Mhm.
It's such a personal thing. Would you say with your experience, and you're not a therapist, you're a dietitian, but you
Mhm.
support individuals who are in this space
Mhm.
and experiencing this. So would you say like do they want to talk about this?
Mhm.
H- And then the next question would be, could you take us through if you have experience with a child, experience with a teenager, experience with a adult, how do they show it that they want to talk
Mhm.
about it differently? I'd love to
Mhm.
know that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to try not to get on my soapbox for too long on this one,
Oh,
but
soapbox, please get on there. This is what we're doing here.
here we go.
You are
So
more
yeah,
than welcome to get on that box.
we're here.
Yours.
We're ready for it.
I'm just gonna call to you the questions and you just answer away, please.
Okay. So, a lot of my career experience is with adolescents and kids, and then next with young adults, and then with adults. So,
Okay.
I was the partial hospitalization dietitian for a program in Seattle for their adolescent program for 4 years and loved it and had a ton of experience there. So, I will say there's a pretty big difference between adolescent and adult treatment in the sense that an adolescent is oftentimes coming to us because somebody in their life decided it was a problem and not because they decided it was a problem.
Mm,
And so it puts you in this kind of odd position as a practitioner where we are aligning with the client, right? We obviously want them to know that we're on their side, that we're working with them, but they maybe haven't seen that there's a problem, right? If they had a parent who was like, oh my gosh, you're falling off your growth curve. You stopped bringing lunch to school. I'm concerned we're going to go get help. We're almost interrupting the behavior, the disorder before it gets to that place where the kid themselves is saying like, "Ooh, this is bad. This is harming me. I don't feel good." They might actually still feel like their eating disorder is kind of their buddy and that it's doing good things for them. Like, "No, I just started losing weight. I just started feeling okay about myself, and now you're going to take that away from me." Now, I for sure had kids who asked to go to treatment or who said, like, I think this is a problem and I'm ready to get some help. But it's a lot more likely in adolescent treatment to have kids there who are just like not actually ready to do the work and get through it. Since they have so much support at home and hopefully they have a team that is supporting them as well, a lot of times we can still make really good progress. And as they become better nourished, a lot of times it helps actually their brains to see things differently. Our brains work better, shocker, when they have enough food in them. And so oftentimes we can still see a lot of progress. And again, we're really helping the kid at that point to see, like, yeah, this, even though we didn't experience the worst of what an eating disorder can cause, it's still serious. We still need to get better. And yeah, their team is really working with them to kind of understand that, understand how to take care of themselves. So, like, what does their body actually need? What are some of the things that can be harmful if we're not getting better from our disorder. And hopefully, we can build a lot of rapport and start to see things improve.
W in order to see things improve, being a parent, mother of 4,
Hmm.
and 2 daughters and 2 sons. So they're most of them are in their 20s. I have 1 in the teens,
Hmm.
early teens. So we've had lots and lots of conversations about this, but one thing I know for sure is it is insanely hard to get a child to see something if they don't see it. You
Uh-huh.
can say all that you want to say, but getting that message through is the most difficult thing. And as a caregiver, it is excruciating because you
Hmm.
know better. They don't know better, and you
Hmm.
can't be there every step of the way. So when you say sometimes, an adolescent will come to me and it's the parent or caregiver that sees the problem.
Hmm.
So would you please, for those who are listening, I feel the best way to do this is to isolate each of these.
Hmm.
So that we can really mine each area. So for the adolescents, and the caregivers, how what is the one of the steps? It might not be the first step, but what's one of the steps that you would say begins to help
Hmm.
support them as an adolescent getting to this space on their own that, hey, what I'm doing, it's not working for me because they think it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So I will say that being a third party person who's not a parent helps. It helps me
Ah,
to build a little bit of rapport because I'm sure you've experienced that other adults can sometimes speak to kids in a way
I love
that
it.
hits a little bit different than their parents. And
I
so
love that. Yeah, of
I'm never not aligned with the parents. Obviously,
course.
are communicating, we're together, we're making sure that we're in agreement. And it can come a little bit better from me a lot of times than it can come from mom and dad. And so with that, that already helps a little bit. Even beyond that, it helps oftentimes for them to know, like, I've done this before, I've seen it. And a lot of times I'm asking questions where I've had so many clients tell me, like, how do you know that? Like, I've never told anybody that. I thought I'm the only person in the world who did that. Um, why are you asking me that question? How did you know to ask
Like
me that
what?
question?
Tell us.
So, like, even things like, does it feel scary to eat in front of people? Like, do you wait until people leave the house to eat food? That can be kind of something that's really hard, or that people are doing and thinking that it's, yeah, only them who's experiencing that thing. Um, People who are like maybe avoiding foods all day and then, sneakily eating those later on when nobody's paying attention, or even things like body checking behaviors, like spending a lot of time in front of the mirror, measuring, pinching, poking, touching parts of their body and seeing if they feel okay or if if their body has changed. And so as I'm kind of bringing up some of those questions and that those things come up in an initial session, sometimes it opens minds a little bit to be like, "Oh, this is on the eating disorder assessment questionnaire." Like this is this is something that's actually asked of anybody who has an eating disorder. This is like a standard list of questions that everybody is being asked. Maybe this isn't just like this small thing that's not really disordered or not actually concerning. It sounds like maybe this is actually a really normal thing to experience if you have an eating disorder. And it sounds like I'm doing a lot of the things on this list. And so that kind of gets us started again on this path of like I both see you and understand that there's a reason for what we're doing and I understand that it makes you feel better and that it feels like it's helping you when you're doing these things. And unfortunately, I can see the future a little bit. Like
Yep.
I know the end result of where this ends up. And oftentimes, what I'll say to any of my clients is, especially if we have a restrictive eating disorder, there's two outcomes. We either eat more food or we die. Like those are really the only two things
Right.
that can happen, right? We have
Right.
to either start taking care of ourselves and eat enough food to fuel our bodies, or the other alternative is that our body doesn't get to exist anymore, right? That's
Wow.
just how being a person works. And
Yes, it
so
is.
I think I
Mm.
I take a pretty honest,
Right.
somewhat blunt approach where we're having pretty real conversations pretty early on of like, this is serious. This is something we have to take. Um, Not just as like, again, a passing fad that we're just going to get over. This is something that if we don't treat it now, I've seen 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds with eating disorders. We don't grow out of it. There's not a point in time where we just decide like, "Know what? I'm an adult and I've changed my perspective on this and I'm not going to live this way anymore." If we don't treat the disorder and we don't treat the underlying causes, it's not just going to miraculously be something that we grow out of. And so for both parents and kids, I think that's something that can be really eye-opening because I've heard so
Yes.
many teenagers tell me like, "Well, I'm in high school now. I have to be thin or I have to do this to be friends with people, but when I go to college, I'm going to have way more important things to think about. I would never have an eating disorder in college." And I'm like,
Wow.
"Guess what? I work with a lot of college students who definitely still have their eating disorders, and it doesn't just magically go away
Right.
because we get older."
Okay, so this is something that you would be saying to anybody,
Yeah.
whatever. But what I hear you saying is, we're not getting over this. This is a pattern. This is
Mhm.
a mindset. This is a belief.
Mhm.
This is grown. This is grown from a seed into something else.
Yeah.
So when one question that I wrote down here was when you were speaking about the three things you were saying, does it feel scary to eat in front of someone? Are you avoiding food and then sneakily, eating when no one's looking? Or are you body
Mhm.
checking, right? Measuring, pinching, that sort of thing. And then I wrote down, what is help?
Mm.
Because that might be an interesting question. What is help? Because if you're in this space and you are
Mhm.
thinking as a 7, 8, 9, 70, 25, 40,
Mhm.
whatever, however old you are, man, woman, you know, what is help? Because if this is what makes you feel good, why do you need help?
Yeah.
And that's the barrier to entry.
Mhm. Yeah. So we've been maybe a little bit focused on like the body image side of things and
Ooh,
the control and all of that kind of stuff.
yeah.
But at its core, when I'm leading like eating disorder 101 type groups or
Sure.
talking to people about, how does an eating disorder come to be? The very first thing that I want people to understand is that it's primarily a coping skill. So
Right.
we all need and have things that help us get through life. We experience hard things in life and we find a way to cope with them. So for some of us, we develop coping skills like talking to our parents or talking to friends or going for a run or I don't know, playing a sport, doing things that help us feel better, going to therapy, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
An eating disorder kind of starts to develop because what we see is that especially for people again who restrict, um, we actually feel better when we're not eating enough food. Our brains respond to having less energy by almost calming our nervous system down. And so, for somebody who's restricting calories, restricting food groups, things like that, they probably actually feel better when they're doing those things. And so, for somebody who doesn't have that effect, who gets hangry when they're not
Yeah.
eating enough food, like
Right.
myself, we're like, "I don't understand. Like, why don't you just go eat something?" And the reality is it's so much more complicated than that. It's both helping to physiologically help them to feel better, but it's also psychologically helping them to feel better. So it's this duality of treating a symptom really, really effectively in the short term. The issue is it causes a lot of problems long term.
Y- yes, it does. I have a question around this because when I was looking, I think it's on your website, you were listing sort of the what you what it looks like,
Mhm,
and I'm just gonna pull it up because what it said here is what is the full life?
mhm,
So you're talking about fat positive,
mhm,
health at every size, anti-diet, and then you're saying we are specialized practice dedicated to the treatment of disorder eating, restriction. So you mentioned restriction, binging, purging, excessive exercise, and extreme pickiness. Now,
mhm.
I knew all of that except extreme pickiness.
Yeah.
Extreme pickiness. So, how does restricting, if you saw someone who was a child, because most children
Mhm.
are picky
A little picky.
eaters.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
do we, because parents say this all the time. How does a parent, because that surprised me. I was actually quite surprised by that.
Mhm.
Would you please, because you're talking about the restrictive process here, and that makes me feel like that's restrictive. Yes?
Yeah, so it's restrictive with a slightly different etiology, like a slightly different beginning. So extreme pickiness is kind of a colloquial way of saying avoidant restrictive feeding and intake disorder. So ARFID is kind of the diagnostic term. I put
Okay.
extreme picky eating on my website because most people aren't super familiar with the
No.
concept of ARFID. And even within pediatricians, it's really underdiagnosed. And so parents will come in and be like, I swear, my kid will only eat chicken nuggets and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and nothing else, I swear. And a lot of times they'll get the feedback of like, they'll grow out of it. They'll just start eating things like starve them out. Every kid has to eat at some point. And what we see is that for kids with ARFID, it doesn't actually happen. They won't start eating more foods at some point. They really do stay in those limited categories.
Yeah.
And so it absolutely does fall under the restrictive category. And there can be messiness of like kids who have always had ARFID, but then they develop some body image stuff and start showing some more anorexia-like tendencies. But for ARFID, it is a really different treatment protocol than some of the other disorders. It's oftentimes, um, it shows up a lot younger. So like a lot of times we see ARFID start showing its behaviors or its symptomology closer to like 2 to 3 years old as opposed to closer to around puberty. Can you hear me?
No. Hold on. That was so weird. You were just getting into the good
I
stuff.
know. Okay,
Okay, we're here. We're
we're
here.
here,
I'm
we're
here.
back.
We're
I
here.
apologize.
Okay.
Hopefully that doesn't
No,
happen again.
you did nothing. This is what I usually call you are speaking to something that is incredibly powerful,
And the internet can't handle
and the internet can't help
it.
handle it. So for those listening, we just had a tech issue and we both kind of fizzled out for a second there. But that was right in the middle
Mhm,
of you saying you are talking about the healthcare professional practitioner saying, to someone, oh, we'll just starve the kid out. We'll just, if they're a picky eater,
mhm.
who only eats chicken and whatever. So go ahead, keep
Yeah.
that going.
So, unfortunately, a lot of
Yeah.
kids who are more in that ARFID category aren't really going to have that be effective. They don't just magically start eating more foods, and the parents oftentimes know this and they're like, "I'm telling you, like if I don't offer these foods, they just won't eat for like days." And so ARFID as a diagnosis is that like extreme picky eating. Parents oftentimes will be like, "I'm so bummed my kid doesn't like salad," or like, "They won't eat sushi with me and it's my favorite food." That's not really something that requires treatment for the average kid. Like,
Okay.
those are foods that they may or may not grow to like in the future, but it's not really negatively impacting them.
Okay, but what's the coping skill, in your
Mm.
opinion, underneath this extreme pickiness? What would be a coping skill here?
Yeah. So for ARFID, we more likely see it, and I can't remember if this came through while I was talking, but we see it occurring or it starts closer to that like 2 to 3 year old range rather than being something that develops later in life. And
Hmm,
so what typically is happening if a kid is going to develop ARFID is that they have a negative experience eating food really early in the like transition to solids time frame. So things like having a choking incident, having a food that like caused them to be sick, gave them food poisoning, having something that usually tastes one way, but maybe it had spoiled or gone bad and they had a really negative experience with that. And kids on the autism spectrum who have sensory difficulties are all more or likely to develop ARFID. And so it's less, again, the treatment is kind of different because it's less about um the like tolerating of life, and it's more of a protection that their brains and their bodies have developed from having adverse food experiences. And so when
okay.
we're treating ARFID, it's a lot more of like building confidence, helping to kind of establish trust that we can try new things and that bad things won't happen to us. Doing more like food exposures, things like that to help kids or adults be able to practice eating things that they haven't previously been comfortable with. And it is, I mean, it's amazing how many adults come into my practice, or, I've worked with a lot of adults who are like, yeah, it's literally been my entire life that I've been this
Yes.
way. And nobody ever told me that I could get treatment for this. I've just been told, like, you're just picky. Why don't you just eat more things? Um, and yeah, it can be kind of damaging to people's sense of self.
Yeah, so you're just picky. Why don't you try?
Hmm.
You're never good enough in terms of eating.
Hmm.
You don't know how to nourish your body. I mean, these are the things, this is the messages that we're hearing.
Hmm.
How does that impact a adolescent's sense of self?
Yeah. So, we see a lot of resiliency for teens that come in because the reality is they've had to find a way to exist with their ARFID. So they
Okay.
know that if they go to a birthday party and it's chocolate cake and they don't like chocolate cake, they only eat vanilla cake or they only eat, one cookies or something like that.
Yeah.
They kind of know that the kids are going to say something or that even adults are going to say something, and they've found a way to kind of tolerate that, right? And so it can definitely impact people's view of themselves. Like, they can
Mm,
kind of feel like, "Yeah, I just don't get it. Like, I don't know why I get so afraid to try new things. I don't know why
yeah.
I can't do this. I just know that my entire body and my entire brain is yelling at me to say, don't do it. It's scary. It's bad. Something bad is going to happen. So, again, my job is then to help them kind of both understand the etiology, but also to understand, like, okay, so we need to put you in positions where you can have a really safe encounter with uncomfortable foods to help your brain and your body to start to realize that bad things aren't going to happen to you when we try new things.
Wow. Bad things aren't going to happen to you when we try new things.
Mhm,
That's really important. That's
mhm,
very powerful, actually. So, does this, I mean, in the beginning, I said, "Oh, let's break it up and, talk about kids and teenagers and
mhm.
college," but this sounds straight across the board. This doesn't sound like you can I being without knowledge can categorize this. It's like
Yeah.
this actually, I don't think it's appropriate now that I'm thinking about it, to sort of categorize and say it's going to be different when you're a teenager adult. Because I think what you're saying, what I hear you saying is this is the core. This is what
Mhm.
people are experiencing, no matter what age they're at.
Yeah.
Sometimes things develop earlier, and sometimes they develop later. But either way, if you're wondering what the core is, here it is.
Mhm. Yeah. I think the one difference I would say about when we're an adult pursuing treatment as compared to a kid is that, again, it's our choice at that point. And so sometimes you'll see a little bit more readiness to get into the deep stuff, to talk about kind of where this came from, when it first started. But what also is true is that a lot of times they've had their disorder for longer. Most of the time we see eating disorders start around the age of puberty, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later, but vast majority of time is around puberty. And so if you're 30 and we've never done treatment before, we've had our eating disorder for potentially 15 plus years as it
Right.
compared to a 15-year-old coming to treatment who maybe has only had their disorder for a year. And so the level to which the coping can feel like a part of us or
Yep.
can feel authentic, like an authentic part of who we are, is really different if we've been suffering for longer.
That is really interesting. That makes so much sense. If it makes you feel good, why is
Mhm,
it bad?
mhm,
Would be the thought.
mhm.
Oh, and this is why there's so many layers, and this is why it's really complicated. And
Yeah,
this might be why people don't want to talk about it.
yeah.
I have a question about um, body dysmorphia.
Mhm.
Do you do you have any ability to talk about that at all?
I can talk a bit about it. I I feel a little bit like I'm underselling myself and a little bit like I'm being truthful when I say I'm not an expert. Most of my clients have body dysmorphia, and so there's and again, this is where I'm like, maybe somebody would disagree with me and be like, that is not
Sure.
true. That is a real diagnosis that not
Well,
everybody with an eating disorder has.
so what I would like to say though, if somebody is going to disagree, I hope they're a therapist or a doctor, and then I'd like them to reach out and come on the show because I need to tell you, Gretchen, I can't find many people talking about body dysmorphia. It's
Mhm.
the weirdest thing. I
Yeah.
do not know what's happening. We're talking about all kinds of things in this world. I need someone to come on and thank you. Please start the conversation so that it doesn't matter. Again, this is your soapbox and we're okay with it. So get on the soapbox and
Yeah.
talk to us about body dysmorphia, please.
So yeah, my again,
Yep.
non-diagnosing clinician
Got
perspective
you.
is that body dysmorphia is so common because one, social media, right? Like even just seeing other people's adjusted bodies day in and day out really shifts what we think a normal body looks like. And so when we look in the mirror, we see, a wider face and a bigger nose and smaller lips and wider shoulders and a waist that doesn't go in and go back out. And so we start to see ourselves as deficient in some way, right? And so we start to develop these beliefs about ourselves that, oh my gosh, I need to change the way that I look. I need to shift how my body looks to other people. And of course this existed before social media did, but even with Photoshop, even with just comparisonitis, the way that we think human beings are supposed to look, or what the
Yeah.
most beautiful person in the room is supposed to look like, is
Yeah.
for the most part non-human at this
Well,
point. It is all like,
totally.
yeah,
Well, it's
it's
what you just said was so important to interrupt because I think this is an important point. You said it's an adjusted look.
mhm,
Most people are talking about their body, but they've had work done. So
mhm,
for someone who hasn't had any work done, you're looking at them going, they got like, how come everyone has perfect lips? How come like that
mhm,
is what perfect looks like? And or that's what, women's breasts look like, or that's what,
mhm.
a man's waist should look like, or their arm definition, or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We still pinch, poke, and measure at 60.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And so, obviously that's gonna impact our our perception of what we're supposed to look like throughout our lives. When we're not seeing people around us or on the internet who are actually aging without filler, or without Botox, or without things like that, we see ourselves aging and think that there's something wrong with us, right? We internalize that as like, I'm the gross kind of human, or I'm the kind of human who doesn't age well. And everybody has bodily autonomy. Everybody gets to make the decisions that they want to make about their own bodies. But I think sometimes we forget to look around the people who are actually like in our lives. Sometimes I'll be like, go to the beach and actually look around and look at the body diversity that exists on the beach. Don't look at Instagram before you go. Don't look at the people who are, their entire business, their entire career is modeling
Mhm.
essentially on the internet. They
Sure.
are not the normal average person who exists. You're going to see body diversity on the beach. You're going to see body diversity walking around downtown in different shops. You're going to see body diversity at school.
Mm,
But again, we don't like glorify that in the same way as we glorify Instagram and influencers and things like that. We see them as the ideal, even though they're editing the things that they're posting online, and that's not even what they look like, right?
true. It's very true. It's not even what they look like. Now, one question about body dysmorphia. Do is one I don't know what you would say, not symptom, but I don't know. Here's the question. You look at your body and it looks
Mhm.
bigger than
Mhm.
you think it is. And so when someone else looks at you, they say, "That's no, like you
Mhm.
look amazing." And you go, "But I don't.
Mhm.
I don't feel good." So what happens here and how do we speak to this?
Yeah. Yeah, so again, this is where I'm going to get a little bit out of my depth of, I
Okay,
think a therapist is a little bit better at knowing the psychological like
sure.
shift that is happening.
Mm,
From what I'm looking at with a client is, you know, we can look at things as what is accurate and true, and what are you feeling, and what you're feeling is valid and important, and we care about it. But if we are in a small body that is underweight and needs weight restoration to heal, we can definitively say that your body is not too big. It's just not true, right? Like,
sure.
that's just not the reality of the situation. So then we need to start asking ourselves, like, how do we start shifting that narrative? How do we start being more honest about what a body can and should look like, what our body, a healthy version of our body, is supposed to look like? And what we sometimes see too, and really oftentimes see, is that when we start the weight restoration process or start the renourishment process, we actually see that body image gets better as we get
Okay,
more nourished. And so, again, this is where I might not be able to speak to the actual brain changes that are going
sure.
on, but
That's
we
right.
do see that body dysmorphia lessens and body acceptance increases as we eat more food and are better nourished. That does not mean that we magically stop having any body image issues. We live in diet culture. We are
Yes.
surrounded by messaging about how to change your body, when to change your body, how to diet. So,
Yeah.
anybody, I will even include myself in that as somebody
Sure.
who's been doing this work for a pretty long time, anybody is going to be impacted by that sometimes and feel like, ugh, would my life be better if I lost 5 pounds? Like, maybe it would. I don't know. I just watched that commercial and that lady seems so happy.
Right.
But we build better reserves or like better skills, better
Yeah.
coping to be
Yeah.
able to recognize like I actually am not going to feel better. I've actually tried that. I've
Uh,
tried the lose weight to make myself feel better and guess what? It didn't work. It didn't actually solve all my problems. It's not actually about my body. It's about the way I've been told to feel about my body.
ooh, it's not actually about my body. It's the way I've been told to feel about my body.
Mhm.
Ooh, I'm writing this down. This is, I'm even writing the timestamp because this is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. Okay, so then, you know, talk about that.
Yeah.
So the messaging, it seems like you're saying we're gonna have to repair the messages that we're
Mhm.
receiving. So that it would be very hard in this day and age because you can't say to a kid, you can say to a kid, but it's
Mhm.
hard to say to a kid, now you can't be on your phone because the messages that you're seeing are now affecting your body. Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
that is you're taking them away from lots of connection
Yeah.
with their group, and that's
Mhm.
really important. You don't want them to feel it. So how do you get this message through? What
Mhm.
do they begin to do?
Yeah. So I will say from a social media standpoint, I will have kids in my session and adults in my sessions
Yeah,
go through and unfollow people who make them feel bad about themselves. And I have a long list and it's on my Substack. If anybody wants to look it up, it's you'll
sure.
have to scroll for a little bit, but it's
Okay.
pinned and it is not paywalled. A list
Okay.
of all my favorite Instagram people to follow who are in diverse body sizes, in like different colors of skin, all of that kind of
Yes.
stuff.
I
And
love that.
so, yeah, that is one of my first things to say is make your feed look like the real world. If your feed is all thin people, something's got to change because that's not the real world. You're not getting an actual visual representation of what the average person looks like.
Okay, so let's just repeat that because that piece, I'm just gonna, if I interrupt you, it's because I'm highlighting this. That this is not the real world. This
Hmm.
is not the real world. When you have a feed, an Instagram feed any kind of feed that is of just thin people, that's not the real world. The real
Hmm.
world is diverse, and there
Hmm.
are a lot of different body sizes and shapes, and it doesn't mean that that person is not beautiful.
Yeah.
And that is the point. Okay. That's
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah. So starting there,
Yeah.
that's a really great place to start. Then I start saying, can we empower ourselves a little bit
Sure.
and make the world a better place and report those things that are clearly disordered? When somebody posts a what
Hmm.
I eat in a day video and they eat 4 small snacks, that's disordered. That is promoting eating disorder content online and it is against the policies of the platforms. So they even have a little report button that is for promoting disordered eating content. So you can go in and you can say, know what? I don't want to feel this way, and nobody deserves to feel this way, and report those people. And then you can go in and block them. And it can take a while to start having your feed start showing you different things. But I can tell you that I do not see that stuff on my page. Every once in a while, I'll have like a couple breakthrough like disordered content things and it
Mm.
always surprises me because I'm like, wow, I just am not seeing this, but I can only imagine how hard it would be to not think this way if this was what I was seeing all day. Like people who are playing perfectly happy, perfectly healthy, always enjoying life content
Yeah,
from a disordered lens, it makes it look so pretty and
it
so
does.
happy. And so it makes it really hard, especially for a teenager who, a teenager's developmental job at that point is to fit in and find friends and develop community. That's really what their brain is telling them to do. And so when they see these influencers, a lot of times their perspective is this is how I'm going to get friends. This is how people are going to like me. This is the only way for people to accept me is if I morph into this type of person. Adults are a little bit better at recognizing like that's not true. I turned out
Mhm.
okay and I did theater and was
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of a dork.
Yeah,
Things turn out
absolutely.
okay on the other side. But teenagers are really bad at recognizing that. They don't have the same forward thinking that adults have.
No, no, they don't. And we love you, teenagers.
Yes.
We love you. But this
Yeah.
is why we're having this conversation. We're having
Mhm.
this conversation because we need more information. This is incredibly informative. Can we please speak to men?
Yeah.
Our beautiful men, our lovely boys who, we know men are getting lost here and boys are
Mhm.
getting lost because we have more females. Now, you can correct me too, but
Mhm.
more females are suffering from
Mhm.
eating disorders than men and
Yep.
boys. I looked at something, it was by the Johns Hopkins Medicine, and
Mhm.
it said as many as 30 million people in the United States have an eating disorder. And so then because I live in Canada, I was like, okay, so then like where am I?
Yeah.
And so then the it came up and said more than 1.7 million Canadians suffer. Um, and large proportion, majority are female
Mhm.
adolescents and emerging adults.
Mhm.
And males account for approximately 20% of sort of this. So why are men getting lost? Why are our
Mhm.
young boys getting lost in this shuffle?
So I think
It's not
part
a
of it
shuffle,
is
but you know what I'm saying.
yeah, yeah, I do know. So, if I'm thinking back to my high school health class and
Yeah.
they're doing their 1 day of eating disorder education, that obviously was really, really good and thorough. I may have a couple qualms with the
Well,
health
hey, no, let's just say
education
it out
system.
loud. Hey, Gretchen, we need to be better. Wake
Mhm.
up. I
Yeah,
don't have a problem in using that term. We are looking at a
mhm.
151% increase.
Yeah,
This should be a like a class that's every day. This should
yeah,
be psychology classes should start like early, early, early on.
yeah, yeah.
Let's not
Well, and
pretend, not that you're
yeah,
pretending, but let's say it out loud, shall we?
yeah.
I'm
Well,
feeling
and even the
irritated.
way believe me. Same. I would
Oh,
love
sure,
to not
you
have a job anymore.
right. Right.
Mhm.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It'd
hear
be
you.
cool to pivot. I can go do cardiovascular health, things like that. I don't need to
Sure,
do this for forever. But
sure.
here we are. I'll keep doing this until they don't need me anymore.
Here we are,
But
and I would love to see you out of a job, no offense, but
yeah.
this would mean what it would mean is it would mean that conversations happened. It would mean that people woke up. It would mean
Mhm.
that we would begin to start changing how we are interacting with our devices, with
Yeah.
what we put into our heads, into our bodies,
Mhm.
into our hearts. This is what it would mean. And so I don't wish this on you, but it would be really important.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
back to our men and boys.
Yes, exactly. So, I look back on that class and I think every single image was of a female. Every single image was of a white, teenage, very, very emaciated female. And even the way that we talk about eating disorders for young kids is a lot of times about like, it's about vanity, it's about caring what we look like, it's about wanting to be thin. And we don't really see those as the primary drivers of male eating disorders. We actually see a lot of men who are having, they actually call it bigorexia right now. That's kind of its little name of like pumping themselves full of only protein, going to the gym for hours and hours a day, really hyper focusing on building muscle and being strong and having some of those masculine like characteristics, I guess. There definitely are boys and men who are having more of the drive for thinness, same as we see in females, but a greater percentage of boys and men are having that like, I need to be strong and feed my body perfectly. Even kind of some of that like biohacking and wellness hacking stuff that is really big in
Mm,
like very masculine podcasts and environments right now
yeah.
is a driver for some of those behaviors as well. And so we see more of that like orthorexia of really hyper fixating on the type of food that we're eating, the amount of food that we're eating. We see the like bulking and cutting even in high schoolers. If parents are out there and your son brings up bulking and cutting, cut that out. High schoolers are all in a growth phase. We should never be seeing high schoolers cutting weight. It is so detrimental. They are growing bones, brains, and bodies.
Bulking and cutting.
Mhm.
What is it?
Yeah, so it's a gym bro term
A
of
gym
like
bro?
yeah, yeah, believe me, I don't wish I knew these terms. I wish I could have lived without knowing the term gym bro, but it
Lord.
is it's the um so basically bulking is gaining weight, so like
Yes.
being in a caloric excess to try and build muscle, grow stronger, and then
Right.
cutting is attempting to lose weight. And you know, it it's a little bit more familiar if you think about like wrestling, where people want to be as strong as possible, but as light as possible to fit into weight classes.
Sure.
Wrestlers have notoriously always been the male sport that develops the most eating disorders. So
Okay.
anybody who has that level of focus on body type and manipulating food is just really significantly more likely to develop some disordered eating. But yeah, so even like football players are doing that. Like they bulk for their season and then they cut afterwards to try and lose a dramatic amount of weight to have a different body type before they start bulking again.
Mm,
It is really detrimental to growth in adolescence. And so, the first time that I heard like, oh yeah, my brother's been bulking and cutting, of course it's the the daughter who's in my office and I'm like, "Is your brother talking to
right.
anybody? Because
Yes.
that's a concerning behavior." Like
Sure.
that is really similar. Like if we kind of juxtapose it over bulimia, we have that same like restrictive pattern followed by a binging and then or followed by a binge and then followed by further restriction and following that same type of pattern, but it's this socially normalized like for my health type of thing, even
Mm.
though once again it's the same thing as the eating disorder behavior.
So how are we missing this?
I think again, we started here. It's so normalized. And when you have like older male role models who are talking about themselves doing this, again, we have a lot of younger boys starting to listen to podcasts or YouTubers or things like that that are health focused. And, I put the term health maybe a little loose in that. It's really focused on strength or things like
Yeah.
yeah, changing muscle groups, all of that kind of stuff. And so
It's cool
it's
to look like
cool.
that, right?
It
Like, you see
is.
a lot of guys and they're cool, they got the
Uh-huh.
tattoos, they've got the, whatever, and and they look strong, they look badass,
Yeah.
and that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's
And
not
so
cool for your body, that's the
it's,
problem.
yeah, exactly. And again, that's the crux of it all.
Gosh.
It feels the belief is I'm doing something to help myself. There's a stat that I heard a long time ago that 1 in 5 people who are dieting will develop an eating disorder. Like, it doesn't start as like, I think I'm going to develop an eating disorder. I think
Right,
I want to have anorexia. I think I would love to develop binge eating disorder. It starts
right.
as, oh, I life is hard. I feel like I'm not that happy with my body. If my body was different, maybe I'd be a little bit happier. Maybe I'd feel more in control of things. I'm going to start keto. I'm going to start intermittent fasting. I'm going to start counting my
Right,
calories. And then over time, that becomes more and more of an obsession, more and more restrictive. We keep cutting calories, we keep restricting food groups, and we don't get to that place of equilibrium of like, oh, this isn't actually helping me. I don't feel more in control. I don't feel happier. I don't all of a sudden love my body. We just keep pursuing the next goalpost because that's where happiness lies, right? And I think that's the lie of the eating disorder is just follow me, just do these things, and someday if you do it right and you do it as well as you can, you will find happiness or joy or self-love.
so is there a lot of shame?
Mhm.
Because I would imagine it's like, I don't belong unless I'm doing X,
Mhm.
Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of
So
shame, or is it fear? Like, what emotion is accompanying this that you can maybe speak to?
yeah. So I see a lot of shame and guilt, obviously,
Yeah.
but it shows up differently, right? So for
Okay.
somebody who is maybe cutting out food groups, if they go out to dinner with their family and everybody's ordering dessert and they decide, like, know what, I've been really good this week. I'm going to let myself order a dessert.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we're overcome with shame and guilt after that. Like, I made this bad decision. I can't believe I did this. This was so harmful. For people on the binging and the purging side of things, oftentimes those behaviors are really, really attached to shame. Again, not for everybody, but for a lot of people. And so, you know, again, when we're looking at, we can look out at the world, right? Even outside of the eating disorder community. What are things that are glorified? Being thin,
Yeah.
having a small body, being really in control of what we're eating, being on a diet, being able to stay on a diet and not cheating and not needing to go off of it. All of those are like pretty standardly praised things in our society. So somebody who is restricting oftentimes fits that mold. So when they're doing those things, they feel pretty good about themselves.
Mm.
But for the vast majority of people, like we said a long time ago, you either
Yeah.
have to eat more food or your body starts deteriorating. So
Right.
for most people, they develop binging or overeating as a symptom and they start that cycle of restrict binge,
Okay.
which then we have that offshoot of people who are like, well, this sucks. I don't like this. And then we develop purging behaviors from there. So, what I see most often is that almost everybody is restricting at some point, right? That's the behavior that people want to be doing because that's the behavior that gets praise. It's also obviously the most harmful behavior that you can do because
Right.
we're under eating, we're not getting enough energy. But again, that binging most of the time happens. That's why anorexia is the least commonly diagnosed eating disorder, is because most people don't maintain that level of restriction for long enough to get an anorexia diagnosis. It's a very small subset of people. Most people then start to have the binging, the overeating, and then develop the purging behaviors. And so, again, all of that brings up shame because I'm supposed to just be restricting. People like it better when I'm restricting. People will like me better if my body is smaller. And so that feeling of being out of control, which again is your body saving your life, right? Binging is a behavior that is helping you to actually get nourishment after restricting and not eating enough
Right.
food. And so there's a lot of shame associated with it, but it's one of the best life-saving measures that your body has to protect you from starving.
Yeah, like ravenous
Mhm.
in order to keep your mind clear.
Mhm.
ravenous in order to keep your blood flowing, your heart beating, your
Mhm.
breath in line, ravenous to make your liver the ravenous feeling or that, like, "I gotta have something right now." It's
Uh-huh.
your organs saying, "We can't work under these conditions."
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that like ancient part of our brain. Most of human history, we've been way more likely to exist through famine than to choose to go for a diet, right? Like that's
Mm,
not something that 1,000 years ago people were necessarily doing, to my knowledge. I guess I'm not an ancient civilization apologist.
apologist.
But to my knowledge, that wasn't
Yes.
like the same thing as we're doing today. So your
Right.
body's when we're undernourished, your body is like, "Ooh, scary. Like we don't want this. This is
Mm,
bad. We
right.
need energy to survive." And so, when people describe that out of control feeling of binging or overeating, a lot of times I think of it as like it's turning off that front part of our brain that's the like logical thinking, what makes us human part of our brain. And we're turning on that lizard part of our brain that's like survive. And
Wow.
so it really does feel out of control when we're binging or overeating because that front part of our brain isn't what's making that decision. It's that really, really instinctual part of our brain that's saying like survive, we have to get food in our body to survive. And again, that's that feeling of like I don't care what I eat, I'm going in the kitchen and I'm eating everything in front of
Yep.
me, like
And then I'm gonna feel really bad
mhm,
because then my body does weird things like bloat
yeah,
and then, like, it's such a you never it feels unpredictable when you do that,
mhm,
yet what you're saying is it actually makes a person who is in this space feel safe.
yeah, yeah,
What?
and
Sorry, go
yeah.
ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I would say it helps their body feel safe, right? But their brain is like, "What did I just do? Like, I can't believe this. I was so good all week. I can't believe that I broke my diet. I can't
Yeah, but
believe
that's the
like."
tension, right,
Mhm.
Gretchen? That's the tension. It's the
Mhm.
body versus the head, and there's no win-win here.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no win because something you're telling yourself a story of shame and guilt. I should
Mhm.
never. Look, I'm so stupid. And then you
Mhm.
revert back to being in that box, being really good so that you can
Mhm.
keep your head and your narrative
Mhm.
safe. But really
Yeah.
the body's screaming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's one or the other. It's like this
Mhm.
really interesting yo-yo, which is
Yeah.
probably why they call it yo-yo diet or yo-yo
Exactly.
as you're
Mhm.
um, can we talk about myths? Do you
Yeah.
know any myths?
Do I know any maths?
Do I know any myths?
I mean, there's just so many. It's hard
Go
even
for
to
it.
know exactly where to start. But like, I mean, we are living through just like an internet wellness misinformation crisis. Like, people are out here saying that vegetables aren't good for you and that we should only be eating meat. Like, no, we have decades of research showing that people live long, healthy lives when they eat a wide variety of foods, including fruits and vegetables.
Sure.
I think a big one that comes up in my practice a lot is that the only way to be healthy is to be thin, and that if we are in a bigger body, if we gain weight, that that inherently is bad for us, that that inherently is going to mean that we die of horrible diseases and have a short lifespan. And the reality is that people of all sizes of bodies get diseases. People of all sizes of bodies die someday, and that a lot of times engaging in health promoting behaviors like having a healthy relationship with movement, having a healthy relationship with food, eating a wide variety of foods, having good relationships, going to the doctor, all of those sorts of things really help make a difference in evening lifespans. People of any size of body are going to see worse health outcomes if they're not engaging in any health promoting behaviors. People in all sizes of bodies are going to experience consequences if, yeah, they don't take care of themselves. And so,
Mm,
you know, there's obviously a lot of messiness inside that
Yes,
too, of
there is.
capacity and time and resources and health inequity and racial disparity and all of that kind of stuff, makes that a little bit more convoluted than I just made
Oh,
it sound. But
yeah.
um, I think, yeah, at the core, if we can start challenging that notion that my healthiest version of myself is smaller, and instead look at it as like my healthiest version of myself takes care of myself and does kind things for
Oh,
myself, I think we'd all be in probably a better mental space and physical space.
my healthiest version of myself is smaller, can shift to my healthiest version of myself is taking care of myself.
Mhm.
What what other myth is there a myth that's out there that is genderless?
Mm. Ooh. I mean, I think, there's so many food myths that come up in my sessions of like, I'm not allowed to eat after X PM, right? Like,
Sure.
and I think the first way to tell that that is a myth is that I've heard every number under the sun, anywhere from like 5 to 10 PM.
Right.
And they're all wrong.
Right.
There isn't a time of day when your body like shuts down, turns out the lights,
Well,
shuts
there's
down the
a
key.
time of day maybe where digestion slows, but that's just because maybe you're sleeping but
Yeah.
right?
So,
No?
like, your digestion will still occur if you're asleep. Your body doesn't, like,
Right.
turn itself off when you're going to bed.
Right.
There have been studies that show that there's really no difference of
Mm.
your quality of sleep, even if you eat right before you go to bed. Some people anecdotally will say, like, "No, if I eat, like, a snack right before I go to bed, I notice it's harder to fall asleep." My question to that would be like, are we judging ourselves? Are we feeling anxious about that? Do we feel like we did something wrong? And is that keeping us awake rather than the food itself? But
Well, and maybe even that's just I don't particularly feel good going to sleep on a full stomach, but
yeah.
I eat a healthy, robust meal,
Mhm.
and that's just my digestive process.
Process. Yeah.
But I will never shy away from if Dave and I are watching a movie, well,
Mhm.
if we're eating nachos, off we go. Like,
Yeah.
and then I go to bed, no problem. It's just I don't I don't like it, but I
Yeah.
have no problem in doing it.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, right? If it's
Exactly.
becoming this idea of like, no, I can't eat what you're
Mhm.
putting in front of me, or I can't enjoy myself. Like somehow you push yourself down or you
Mhm.
stop yourself from feeling happy and joy.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think, what you're describing too is like curiosity and flexibility. The more that we're
Ooh.
able to both be genuinely curious with ourselves of like, okay, so I saw something on the internet that gluten in the United States causes bloating and everywhere else in the world it's fine, but here it's bad. Like, ask yourself the question of like, what do I actually physically notice? Or am I creating a belief for myself, right? And then the flexibility is like, even if I notice that eating right before bed, having something really big before I go to bed kind of impacts my sleep, maybe there's some nights where it's still worth it. Like, yeah, if I'm enjoying nachos with my partner and that's
Yep.
like a thing that I really want and it makes me happy and it's bringing joy to my life, I might be able to tolerate an extra 10 minutes of trying to fall asleep and it's still worth it in my life. I think that
Mm.
rigidity is again part of what defines an eating disorder is like I can't be flexible. If I break my rules, something bad happens or I feel so much guilt that I can't think about anything else. For somebody with flexible thinking, we can make decisions with food that feel aligned with what helps us feel good in our bodies rather than based on what's going to make us feel guilty or ashamed.
Oh, that is well said. As the last piece I'd like to talk as we wrap up is mental health
Mhm.
and eating disorder. Are those connected? Because I've in my research I thought this is a good question to ask you because the research was saying, and I didn't want to cite it because I was
Mhm.
like, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, right? But the some organizations were saying that an eating disorder is a mental illness.
Mhm.
And I wanted to talk to you about that and ask you about that because, we do have a rise in mental health,
Mhm.
and there are lots of people who are, looking for support and help around depression, around
Mhm.
anxiety. Is someone more likely who is experiencing depression or anxiety
Mhm.
to have an eating disorder?
Yeah. Yeah, so an eating disorder is both a physical illness and a mental illness, right?
Okay.
We have that physical interaction with our body. There's a reason why we would like to have a doctor on board when we're treating an eating disorder, and we also have a psychiatrist and a therapist and all of that kind of stuff. So the dietitian and the medical provider are oftentimes touching on a little bit more of the physical while kind of blurring that line in the mental health side. And the therapist and the psychiatrist are doing a little bit more of the mental health while blurring that line of the physical as well,
Hmm.
because it's all obviously interconnected. Now, there is kind of this, I don't even know that it's a debate, but we do know that anxiety and depression are incredibly common to be co-occurring with an eating disorder, and it's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario. So having anxiety can decrease our hunger cues. It can make it feel better to not be eating food. That can start to feel better and better, or, start to be more of a habit and develop an eating disorder. But also, we know that a malnourished brain is more likely to feel anxiety a little bit stronger. And so, for some people, the anxiety comes first. For some people, the eating disorder does. The same thing with depression. We know that a malnourished brain is more likely to not tolerate emotions well, to feel more lethargic, to have more fatigue. Some of those things mimic some depression symptoms as well. But also, we know that people with depression are more likely to struggle to get out of bed, to struggle with their activities of daily living. Making food becomes really difficult if we are in a depressive episode. And so, all of that is also more likely to kind of lead into some potential disordered behaviors. And really, anything else under the sun can definitely co-occur. I know that bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, OCD, all of those things are really commonly co-diagnosed alongside an eating disorder. And so I try really hard to help my clients see that we don't need to silo it all. It's probably all somewhat connected. Our OCD and our eating disorder are playing together. They hang out. They
Right.
impact us both in different ways, and also they probably mirror each other at times. And same with anything else.
Wow. Oh, I just love talking to you.
I'm happy to be here.
Seriously, I just feel, I always say this, and this is probably, it maybe should become my tagline, but every episode that I make an introduction with, I'm like, this was the best conversation I ever had. It's kind of like my kids when, their whole life, I would say, you are my favorite. Like, you're my
Mhm.
favorite. And I know that might not be sound, but I'll tell you what, every kid's my favorite, every single kid in my
Mhm.
life, and all of my friends, family, family
Yeah.
friends who, "You're my favorite." And so then when my youngest daughter was young, she said, "Mom, am I your favorite?" And my kids were like, No." Like, "We're
I
my
have
favorite."
been told
Yeah,
multiple times.
I have it on record, and I feel the same way about all these conversations that I have.
Mhm.
They are my favorite. Like, it's just
Yeah.
my favorite, and it's my favorite because you are the right person for the right time. You are the right person for this very moment, and I just want to affirm you because the work that you are doing is so important. And I want to say thank you. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you for creating a space. You have opened up a conversation. This morning, I'm like I said, I was pouring my coffee and I'm watching my dog in the yard, and I'm like, how come I don't see a lot
Mhm.
about these kinds of conversations about eating disorders. I'm not seeing it, and that made me think 2 things. Am I not interested?
Mhm.
Am I missing? What am I missing here? You have opened the door and created the space for us to hear you. And that to me is the best thing ever. This is not wasted. Your words are powerful. And I always find, something deep down inside me, having been um, held down and locked in by this victimized mentality that I wasn't enough, that I'm
Mhm.
not enough, that I'm not worthy. And that strikes the core to me. It strikes the core in what you're saying. This is the bottom line is that maybe if you're out there listening, you feel like you're not worthy. And we're here to tell you that you are.
Mhm.
You are. And that you matter. And what you're seeing isn't real. It's not real.
Yeah.
What would you like to offer? That was my soapbox. And you. Um, and as you're stepping down from your soapbox, what would you like to impart to our listeners?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say for anybody who's noticing, like, wow, some of the things that you're saying hit a little too close to home, that, brought up some of the things that I've been struggling with. And either didn't recognize that that was happening, or I didn't know if it was a big enough deal. Anybody can seek support. Everybody deserves support. Everybody, you know, deserves to have somebody to talk through this kind of stuff with. We are all under the spell of diet culture and believing that there's something inadequate about ourselves. That is such a strong message that is given to all humans, and maybe a little bit particularly to women. And at the end of the day, it's not true. And being able to work through some of those beliefs with a provider, whether it's a dietitian, a therapist, anybody, can be a really, really empowering experience, and something that can dramatically shift the way that we experience life, ourselves, our bodies, our relationship with food, our relationship with others. I think this work, I mean, I fell in love with it from the first day that I got to experience being in a treatment center and working with clients and seeing the transformations. It really is a powerful thing to start to kind of pull your life back from diet culture and step into your own trust of your own body and your own personhood.
Ooh, step into your own trust of your body and personhood. I'm writing that down because I'm going to say that. I'm saying that in the introduction.
I like that. I'm on board with that.
I know you are. I love this. This has been truly a privilege. I thank you. I thank you, thank you, thank you. You've opened my eyes,
Thank
and
you.
that is the beautiful thing here.
Yeah.
Um, I take this as a lot of you have tried, tested, and true, and you have seen this in action. And what can we do other other than the things that you've mentioned? But you know, to support the people out there who are
Mhm.
like you. What can we start doing
Mhm.
to help bring further awareness?
Yeah, I think be open and honest with people in your life about
Mm,
things that you notice. Seek out different perspectives on this type of stuff. If you notice that, like, you're in a rut with a lot of wellness information being kind of shouted at you, that you're like, just doesn't feel good. It makes me feel inadequate. It makes me feel guilty. It makes me feel scared. Like something bad is going to happen to my body. Look up things like Health at Every Size. Look for professionals who are in the anti-diet space. Get your nutrition information from dietitians, please. There is a lot of bad information about food out there that is really about fear mongering, and yeah, does not help us to actually make a difference in our health, and really just brings shame and guilt into the process.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say seek that out. And again, I think not to open up a new can of worms, but one of
Sure.
the ways that a lot of people connect with each other is by um making bad comments about their own bodies of like, "Oh, I woke up today and I just felt fat," or "I just felt ugly," or "I just hate my hips," or "I hate my lips," or "I hate my ears." And then we connect together by the next person going, "Oh, same. I hate my arms. I just can't do anything to change this about myself." And when you notice that, if you notice your connections to other people being based in hating your bodies, change the story. Do talk about how you're working on actually loving yourself. Talk about how you're working on having a different relationship with yourself. Shift the narrative from it's normal to hate our bodies and we should all be doing that to it's actually okay to be at peace with your body as it is right now. And that might actually help you in your health journey to have greater acceptance of our bodies.
Again, that's just like shift the narrative
Mhm.
that it's normal to hate your body to it's okay to be at peace.
Mm. Yeah.
My parting comment would be, I just remembered this. There was a study done, and I maybe you've heard of this, where now I won't get this part wrong, but I don't actually know like the specifics. But I know that someone, maybe a scientist, put water in dishes and
Mm.
spoke words into the water, and the word came out as a vibration, and then froze it, pulled it out, and looked at it under the microscope. And the words that when the person said, like, "You're ugly, you're stupid, I hate you," the water froze all jagged and crazy. But the
Mhm.
words that were like, "You're beautiful, you were made with you're unique, you're gorgeous, I love you." The water was these beautiful, it formed in these beautiful snowflakes. And I think about us and our
Mhm.
composition,
Mhm.
and we're made with water. And so I can't help but end by saying, what you speak is the world that you make.
Mhm.
And that to me, it's like you're speaking when you are aligning with people who are not who are creating this normal way of being with words like, "Oh, so, if you feel fat or if you feel this or whatever," like, or even just nonverbal, the
Mhm.
energy and the message is going out and it's creating something. And we want to be mindful of that.
Mhm.
I think that's how we can begin, one of the ways to change the conversation.
Mhm.
When you speak words, it creates reality.
Mhm.
And that's where the rub is, because then you got to undo the words you've spoken.
Mhm.
And you've spoken it over yourself. And I know this to be true. I've spoken words over myself that were deficient and lack and poverty. And I've changed it. But that
Mhm.
took a lot of time and a lot of rewiring. I don't want anybody to have to rewire because
Mhm.
it's grueling.
Yeah.
As you well know, this is a grueling process to repair. I mean, it's
Mhm.
important, but repairing is not always pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is
Yeah.
possible. But yeah, if
And
we
it's
can
possible.
yeah, if we can prevent if we can be the cycle stopper, right, of like our
Very good.
kids don't have to think of
Yeah.
themselves that way. We can shift the narrative there.
Yeah.
And if we can heal that in ourselves, like, yeah, it is grueling. It is so hard. It is so, so, so hard to change the way that we view ourselves and the patterns, all of that kind of stuff, but it is possible. So I think, yeah, that's
Beautiful.
where, again, we have a lot of power in ourselves. This isn't just like, well, I don't know, I guess it'll just get worse and worse. Like, we
Mhm.
all do have our power within ourselves and with our own communities to actually change the way we view bodies.
And view our body and
Mhm.
the like I hear you saying, yeah, like you can have both. It can
Mhm.
feel hard and it can be rewarding. It
Mhm.
can feel hard and healing. It can
Yeah.
feel hard or difficult and still be messy, but moving towards congruence. This is how it works. And
Yeah.
I think that to play into the social media thing, and we are being hard on social media right now, and we should
Mhm.
be. Look, I think that, and I think this, I'm not just saying this flippantly. Uh, Now we need to go to our kids and
Mhm.
say, okay, show me who you're following. I
Mhm.
want to see this. People who are caregiving over a person that's under 18, it's not a free for all. And I'm
Mhm.
saying this from experience. I am. I'm a parent. I have 26, 25, 22, and 15. And I know the
Mhm.
drill. We've got to take, we've got to become aware of what our beloveds are
Mhm.
looking at. Because
Yeah.
it is going in, and sometimes it's going in and not the way it was intended.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's rough out there.
It is rough out there, and you're raising awareness, so I wanna thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you for
you.
having me. It's been fun.
It's
Yeah.
been great. Let's try to connect around. I'll make sure to reach out to you about comments or anything that we're experiencing, because this would be great to have you kinda weigh in.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. You are great, and
Thank
the work you're doing is fabulous. Keep doing it. And I hate to say this, but I hope you don't have a job.
I know. Yeah.
Cross your fingers.
We gotta retire soon, right?
But
Yeah.
you are loved and your work, that's why, right? Like
Thank
what an amazing thing to be able to say. I hope I don't have a job, because that would mean that I've done the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. We'll get there someday, I believe.
we sure will. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.